Hello, whistleblowers everywhere. Hopefully, you've all had a wonderful and restful holiday period. Today's video is really a follow on from one I made a while ago on different whistles and different keys. So today I'm going to take things a little bit further, and I'm going to be using four of these. Four of these Killarney whistles in different keys. So I've got one in B flat, one in C, one in D, and one in E flat. I believe that Killarney have recently brought out an A whistle, which I don't have, which I may end up getting at some point. But for now, I'm just going to use the four Killarney whistles in those keys, just to talk a little bit about different whistles, why we need them, and maybe following on with a bit more of the theory which is involved. So yeah, we might get a little bit in depth in this video, so yeah, be warned, it might get a little bit complex, but hopefully not so much so that I lose you. Anyway, if you do have any comments at the end of it, you can certainly send me an email, or you can leave a comment, and I can try and explain things maybe in a slightly different way. But I will do the best I can with this. Without understanding the theory which goes behind transposing, you're going to find things a little bit confusing. But I will take it as slowly as I can and try and make as much sense of it as possible. So let's first of all talk about the D whistle. So I'm going to use a very simple tune. I'm going to use a tune called The Dawning of the Day. It's also a song called Raglan Road. It's the same tune. It's fairly straightforward. I'll include the music so that you can have a play along with it, but unless you have the whistle in the different keys, which I'm going to play the same tune in, you can only really play along if you've got a D whistle in the key of D. Anyway, all will be revealed, so hold on tight, folks. Here we go on to different whistles and a little bit about transposition. So I'm going to start with the D whistle because that's what most people play, and most people will read the music in the key of D or G or the relative minor keys. So if we think about the scale of the D whistle, we've got two sharps. So we've got an F sharp and C sharp. Now they are inherent notes within the whistle. With the whistle being tuned to the key of D, those notes, if we play up and down the scale, will be there automatically. So if I go, so the scale D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, C sharp, and the same in the upper register. Now if I want to play in the key of G, I have to use a C natural. So the cross finger C works nicely on this whistle. You may half hole it. But because our C sharp is all the fingers off, in order to get a C natural, which occurs in the key of G, we have to play a C natural and either cross finger it or half hole it. So if I play the key of G in our scale, and that's using the C natural. So in our scale of D, we can play a number of different scales on what's called modes. So let me talk a little bit about what a mode is. So if we think about the major scale, D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, C sharp, D, even though we just call it a major scale, it's got another name. It's also known as the Ionian mode. And that is to do with the relationship between what's called the tones and the semitones. So what's a tone and a semitone? So a tone would be, say, going from B to C sharp. Or G to A. Or A to B. And a semitone is a half step. So it's the closest interval we can get. I mean, there are quarter tones and microtones, but let's not worry about those. So if we want to go from B to C natural, that's what's called a semitone or a half step. So listen to the difference between B to C sharp and B to C natural. That's B to C sharp, now B to C natural. So B to C natural is a half step or a semitone, and B to C sharp is a full step or a whole tone. Now if we look through the scale, our scale is made up of tones and semitones, or whole steps and half steps. So we'll start with the scale of D major. So it's going D to E. That's a whole tone. E to F sharp, whole tone. Now F sharp to G is a semitone or a half step. G to A is a whole tone. A to B, whole tone. B to C sharp is a whole tone, and C sharp to D is a half step or a semitone. Excuse me. So when we break up the scale into half steps and whole steps, or tones and semitones, what we have is D to E tone, E to F sharp tone, F sharp to G semitone, G to A tone, A to B tone, B to C sharp tone, C sharp to D semitone. So the major scale will always have that same arrangement of tones and semitones. So when I go yep, it gives us the sound of the major scale. And regarding whatever key I play in, that arrangement of tones and semitones is always the same. It gives us the major scale or the Ionian mode. So let's have a look at G to G now. Now, if I was to play it with a C sharp, then it wouldn't sound the same. With the C sharp, it sounds a little bit peculiar. You're actually playing in the Lydian mode if you have the C sharp, but don't worry about that too much at the moment. If we want to play the same arrangements of tones and semitones, half step and whole steps in the key of G, then we have to play the same arrangement. So it will be a C natural. So it will be so it's the same tune, if you like. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. Same tune, but it's just in a different starting note. So if we do the scale of D, and now we do the scale of G. It's the same arrangement of tones and semitones, but just starting on a different note. So tone, 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 semitone, tone, 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 semitone. And it's the same arrangement in G. So tone, tone, semitone, tone, tone, semitone, and then, sorry, it's tone, and then semitone to end with. So we're keeping the arrangement of tones and semitones, half step and whole step exactly the same. We're just starting on a different note. So if we again, we'll have a look at, imagine we're starting the scale on E and going from E to E. Now, because we've changed the starting note, our arrangement of tones and semitones has changed as well. So we're no longer playing in the Ionian mode or the major scale, we've actually changed our mode. So if we have a look at this, which is known as the Dorian mode, it's a minor mode. So we're going E to F sharp tone, F sharp to G semitone, G to A tone, A to B tone, B to C sharper tone, C sharp to D semitone, and then D to E tone. So it's a different arrangement of tones and semitones, and there it gives us a different scale. And it sounds different. It's a minor kind of scale because we've got the starting on the E, F sharp, G. So we're going. And again, if we start with F sharp or G or A or B or C sharp, we're going to get a different mode. I'm not going to go through them all because that'll just be too confusing, but by keeping the arrangement of tones and semitones the same, you are creating a scale in a different mode. And those arrangements of tones and semitones become very important when we're looking at transposition. So what I'm going to do first of all is I'm going to play this tune, The Dawning of the Day. I'm going to play it in the key of D, which is the key that it's written in. So I'll just play it through once, and then I'll talk about a little bit about how it would sound and what we're doing if we're using it on a different whistle. So here we go. So I've now moved on to a C whistle. Again, it's a Killarney. So when we're playing in C, when we play up and down the scale, our arrangements of tones and semitones are exactly the same as they are playing in D. The only difference is we're starting on a C. So we're still going to go C to D tone, D to E tone, E to F semitone, F to G tone, G to A tone, A to B tone, and B to C semitone. So the notes have changed, but the relationship between the notes hasn't. So even though we're starting on a C, our major scale or Ionian mode will remain the same. So the scale is exactly the same. It's the same tune, if you like. Now, if I'm going to play, instead of playing it, this note here on the C whistle, on the D whistle it's a G, but because we've moved everything down a tone, this is going to be an F in reality. So we can still play the same major scale, F, G, A. Now instead of playing the B, we play the B flat, which would be a C on a D whistle. So it's B flat, C, D, E, F. So even though we're playing it in the G fingering or the G scale on the D whistle, because we've shifted everything down a whole tone, we're now playing the scale of F. Same fingering as the G, but we're now sounding in F. And the same rule applies, the same arrangements of tone and semitone to get the major scale. And again, if we're using the Dorian mode, which was E, this is actually because we moved it down to the C whistle. This now becomes the Dorian or the minor Dorian mode of D. So on the D whistle it's E, but because we've shifted everything down whole tone, this will now become the Dorian mode or the minor mode of D rather than E. Same scale. Same arrangements of tones and semitones, same relationship between tones and semitones, but because we're starting on a different note, the scale will actually be different, the key will be different. Now, if I'm going to play Raglan Road, I'll play the same thing again. However, because this is pitched in C, it will actually sound in C. So even though I'm fingering my first note, which is the same as D, because my whistle is pitched in C, it will sound in C. So let's play it again. So because this is now sounding in C, the notation which is written is not giving you what's coming out of the whistle, because the notation is written in D and we are playing the same notes, but because we're playing it on a whistle which is longer and lower in pitch, we're actually playing it in the key of C. So in order for you to play this as written in the key of D, you would have to start on the D on the C whistle. So if you think about playing this on the D in the C whistle, then you're going to have a lot of half holing to do. So yeah, it's tricky because you've got that that note there, which would be C, D, E, F sharp, because this note normally, which would be a G on a D whistle, it's an F on a C whistle. In order for us to get an F sharp, we'd have to half hole it. So it's perfectly doable with practice, but why make things difficult? And that's usually why we play things in different keys on different whistles, because it's easier to finger things. Now you can play pretty much everything that's written on a D whistle or a C whistle or a B flat whistle. However, it's the ease of which you can play it, and unless you are fiendishly good at half holing and cross fingering, things are not always practical to do that. So even though I can play this in D on a C whistle, it's much more preferable to play it on a D whistle because that's the key which it will sound in. So what I'm doing in effect by playing the same notes on the C whistle, I'm effectively automatically transposing down a whole tone. So what would sound in D on the D whistle will sound in C on the C whistle. So now let's have a look at B flat. So I'm going to go even lower. So here's my B flat whistle. Again, it's a Killarney B flat brass. So if I play the same tune again, you can hear that it's gone lower. I'm using the same notes, I'm reading it in the key of D, however it's going to sound in the key of B flat because this is where this whistle is pitched at. So I'm going to play the same tune. So exactly the same tune, sounds exactly the same, apart from it being in a lower pitch. And again, if we look at the scale of our B flat whistle, so we're going B flat, C, D, E flat, F, G, and then after G we've got A, and then B flat. So again, our arrangement of tones and semitones stay the same, we're just using different notes. So the scale. So B flat to C, tone, C to D, tone, D to E flat, semitone, E flat to F, tone, F to G, tone, G to A, tone, and then A to B flat is a semitone. So that arrangement of tones and semitones stays the same, but we're starting on a different note. It's the order of how we put together the tones and semitones. And again, if I'm playing it in the key of, what would have been in the key of G is now in the key of E flat because we've changed and gone lower. So it's going E flat, F, G. Then after G, we've got A flat, B, flat, C, D, E flat. So knowing where the flats and sharps are in different keys is really useful, especially in terms of transposition. So I automatically know that if I'm playing in the key of E flat, that my key signature will have 3 flats. It'll have a B flat, E flat, and an A flat. And similarly, if I'm playing in the key of C, I don't have any sharps or flats in my key signature. In the key of D, I have 2 sharps, F sharp and C sharp. And whatever key you're playing your whistle in, it's handy to know the key signature. So it's a good idea to try and learn them if possible. So you have sharp keys and you have flat keys and you have corresponding minor keys in both sharps and both flats. So I'm not going to go into too much detail about that, but key signature awareness is really helpful because it will help you to know what your notes are and what you are playing within a piece of music. So again, with the dawning of the day, it's exactly the same tune, but rather than being in D or C, it's now in B flat. So I'm going to do one more now, which is E flat. So if we have a look at E flat, yeah, the same relationship of tones and semitones to give us our major scale or Ionian mode. Again, same thing, same arrangement of tones and semitones to give us the same scale. But the notes are different. So we've got E flat, F, G, A flat, B flat, C, D, E flat. And going up again the octave, so it's E flat, F, G, A flat, B, C, D, and then a high E flat at the top. So the same thing applies, the same notes are flat or natural, whatever octave you're playing it in. Those notes within the key signature were always going to be flat or sharp. So let's play Dawning of the Day now. This time we're a semitone or half step up from D. We're in E flat. Now if I wanted to play the same tune on an E flat whistle, I would really struggle to play it in the key of D. Also, this bottom note wouldn't work because there is no bottom D on this starts on an E flat. So I would really struggle with that. And also we've got so many notes which aren't in the key of E flat, which are in the key of D. So I've been reading the same tune, the same notes, but what's coming out of the whistle is in a different key. And what effectively it's done, it has automatically transposed from the key of D to the key of C, to the key of B flat, or to the key of E flat, depending on the whistle which you choose. Same notes, or you're reading the same notes, but in terms of what's coming out of the whistle, it's a different key. Now this can be really confusing because with the whistle not really being a fully diatonic instrument. Now diatonic means you can play a fully diatonic instrument. A fully chromatic instrument, say like a flute or a clarinet or a saxophone or a piano or anything. You can play all the notes in between, so you can play a fully chromatic scale. Chromatic just means you're going C, C sharp, D, D sharp, E, F, G, G sharp, A sharp, B and C. You're getting all the intervals, so you're playing all semitones and tones. Now, even though the whistle can be played chromatically, it's not really designed to be played as a fully chromatic instrument, and it doesn't always sound great. Some other notes, or chromatic notes, you can get through half holing or cross fingering, but a lot of the notes you would struggle with to play something unless you devoted an awful lot of time to practice to play in those fully chromatic notes within the different keys. So that's why we have different whistles. It's just basically to make things easier. We can play the same music, however what comes out is not in the key of D. If we're playing it in a C whistle, it will become the key of C, or it will become the key of B flat if we're playing in a B flat whistle, or it will become the key of E flat if we're playing in the, on an E flat whistle. So whatever the key signature is telling you for a D whistle, you can play that on any whistle in any key. It will still sound the same because the arrangements of tones and semitones are the same. However, it will sound higher or lower in a different key. It's confusing, I know, but you've just got to understand that whatever key the whistle is pitched in is its home key. So with the B flat whistle, for instance, B flat is my home key. What I mean by the home key is that if I start on the lowest note and play up the scale, that's my home key, that's B flat. I can quite happily play in B flat. I can quite happily play in E flat. Quite happily play in C, Dorian. I can quite happily play in an A minor kind of scale. I can play in a B, or what would be a B minor scale. However, even though this is a B flat whistle, if I'm playing what I would say is an A, won't be an A because it's in a B flat whistle. So even though I'm fingering it in an A, it will be B flat, C, D, E flat, F. So that now becomes our F minor. And what would be our B minor on a D whistle now becomes a G minor. So it's confusing, and this is where knowing your key signatures and what flats and what sharps are in them really helps. So if I'm looking at on my B flat whistle, the scale of B flat, what would be an E is now a C. What is now an F? What is an F sharp on a D whistle is now B flat C, D. What is a G on a D whistle is now become a B flat, C, D, E flat. What is an E? What is an A on a D whistle is now an F. And what is a B on a D whistle is now a G on my B flat whistle. What is a C sharp on my D whistle now becomes an A. So being able to know the notes on your whistle is really useful. And that just basically comes by understanding the scales and understanding the key signatures, which notes are sharp and which notes are flat within that key signature. A lot of information to take in, I know. So this is part one of this different keyed whistles. And what we've looked at in this part is the relationship of tones and semitones and how we create the major scale or the Ionian mode, how we create different modes and the relationship of tones and semitones between those different modes and the different scales. However, I played Dawning of the Day and I played it in 4 different keys, even though I was reading it all using the D notation. Because I was using a whistle pitched in E flat, it sounded in E flat. Because I played it on a whistle sounding pitched in C, it came out sounding in C, and same with B flat. So you will be playing in the key the whistle is made in for it to sound in the key. Even though you're reading the same notes, what comes out at the end of your whistle will be in a different key. So the next bit, which is probably the most confusing bit of all, is what happens if you want to play in the key of D, but the music you've got is in the key of C. So you can't really read music in the key of C and play it effectively on a D whistle. One, you'd not got a note low enough to play the bottom C, so you'd always be playing, having to move notes around. And you'd also be having to get used to playing the C natural, which isn't too difficult. You can cross finger C natural nicely. But you've also got an F natural. Now on a D whistle, you've got F sharp. So here's my Killarney D whistle, which home key is D. Now if I want to play in the key of C, I can do by starting on a C, but I've also got to play an F natural, which really is best half hold. So it'd be bottom C. So if the piece you're playing has a lots of C's in the lower register, obviously you're going to struggle. Sometimes you can put it up the octave. But if you want to learn to play what's written in the key of C on a D whistle, you're going to need to then transpose the music. So transposing the music, you would have to put everything up a whole tone. Now this is going to take a separate video because it's quite complex in terms of you have to keep the relationship of the notes the same. So as the scales are the same, tones, semitones, whatever you do in the key of C, you have to basically transpose the music up a full tone. So if, say we're playing a piece of music which was written in the key of C, which is no sharps or flats, and we wanted to play the first, say the first four notes was C, E, G, E. So we're going C, E, G, E, and E being the upper note. So if we wanted to transpose that, we'd have to put everything up a whole tone. So rather than our first note being C, would be D. Our second note, which is E, would go up a whole tone, up to F sharp. And then we've got G, which would go up a whole tone to A. And then we've got E, which would go up a whole tone to F sharp. So what was C, E, G, E now has to become D, F sharp, A, F sharp. So it's quite confusing. Even though the notes are different, the relationship between the tones and the semitones still remains the same. So whenever you're transposing something from whatever key, you have to remember that the relationship of intervals between one note and the other remains the same. The notes may change, but the relationship between the notes will remain the same. It's confusing, I know, and I'm going to do a part 2 of this video shortly. Yes, I know it's confusing. There's lots and lots of new information to take in, but this is quite theoretical, and it does help to understand if you want to get into transposing from one key to another. Whilst transposing can be done automatically from D to any key just by changing the whistle, if you want to do it the other way around, if you want to change something from C to D, you can learn to read in the key of C and play it on a D whistle, or you can transpose the music. And both of those can be quite tricky, so that will be a separate video. So anyway, as usual, thanks for staying with this, and I'm sure you'll have lots of questions. If you want to leave any questions in the comments, that's absolutely fine. Again, if you found this video helpful in any way, perhaps you could subscribe to my Whistleblowers YouTube channel, and I look forward to seeing you all again for part 2 of this rather perplexing and difficult subject of transposition.